that the Kayumalati Susojiba, the Wandrugi, Chu Shiagi, that to Rizikere Ore, Sezan Delia Pebegi, that Yabzi, Jangurubuchi, Yabzi Gazurumbuchi, Nabani Urshube, Jubeku Namadang, Anazingi, Kiboge Senior, and then Anazingi. And Chazum Homo Sayam Mazo Sanlolia Romade Pevdelia Gazushada Tene Niedon Jushilegi Nalo Sadu Shavi Indusane Namalinge Solia Niedon Jushile da Losara the Losavan Dinalolia, Uzu Setayonadam, some the Shishin Drube, Mundu Shuai.
As it is now time to begin my teachings on the Ngondro practice at this 31st Kajumanlam, I'd like to begin by welcoming all of you who are here, led by His Eminence Jamgon Rinpoche, His Eminence Gyatso Rinpoche, all the other tulkus, all the kenpos, all the male and female monastic sangha, and all of you. And also I wish to offer you my best wishes for this new year, 2014, for your good health and for the fulfillment of all your aspirations.
Andre Dusaneta Andari Tindelia Suju Shadi Nedu Dreme Gi Umane, the Longma, Kayumonum T. Suju Begala, Nedu Dreme Chasingi, Munduchi, Jawolo Tai Zesha, Nedu Dreme de Gozune, Tumungi, Wondershi, the true simile. Talone Tumo in being wonder shitting what's weird. That delay at Habo. Taji energy jammed the dorsum de Sanasama. Ting Susuji become the jammed the dorsum de Sanasama. That Nijigi and Shishavi.
Our main topic this morning is to continue with an explanation of the Torch of Certainty. This is the commentary on the practice of Mahamudra and especially its preliminaries, composed by Jamgon Lodro Tai. I began to explain this last year during the 30th Kajumalam, during which we completed the explanation of the common preliminaries. We now begin the explanation of the uncommon preliminaries, and I thought that we might be able to get through the refuge and the Vajrasattva by devoting a session to each.
Da Teleang only Chidangi Chevimina Chikadre, Chu Chebabu Delina, Chu Ma Shengi, Chu Chebabu, Koranlaya, Sini Beyonce Zobaji Majumba Imbinia, Sini Kokadre. check some of the Sini also was Mazumine, Sini Kalakans on the which is Guyore. Chunian Bobotelinea, Tedan Tishingi, Chunian Vega, Gulon, Manorwa, Tagana Shingi, Lungagi, Joram Manorwa, the Guyore. Dainea, Cheshava was a needed danger Vegeta, Sini also the Pashane, Sini Kalakansam somewhere at the G. Tia, Mary Bre, Adrian Dusane, and Titolia, and Kazan Dizzy, Su, they will never charge it. And the preparation somewhere at Taji. That is why Chaloski Jumazo. Tada Dizzy, Gishi, Madia de Visto. Adrian Dusane, Tambuni, Sini Masavical, Tragedy, Abumachi, the day that in the Gisha D. That Shamjin Shuad of Jung, Susuzong water Madobe, Shanghai Somare. The Yimbinea, under the program, let him to Suez having you, Mashev, Katsum dead and Jimere, Jazandan, Kantuji, Marka Shredder, Zodi, Jangurum Chize, Tea, Korang, Tonema, Shia, and some of the Susugi, Simga Toa, Dashumina, and they may Bakashri. Ma tegar shuagi bezu shuyi nova da trivege chashumina nabalenge samololia tadane susu shuyi.
Generally speaking, the teacher of Dharma needs to be fully qualified. And if they're not fully or completely qualified, they need to be at least semi-qualified, by which I mean partly qualified. Also, those listening to Dharma must have the unmistaken motivation and also be engaged in appropriate conduct of body and speech. However, I think that in this instance, the teacher here is not particularly qualified, on top of which I was also unable to prepare for these lectures. So therefore I feel a little bit uneasy that this might prove somewhat embarrassing. However, as the program has been set, it would not be okay for me to simply remain silent. So I will go through this commentary by Jungmulu Drtai and add from time to time my own feelings and reflections about it. If there's anything wrong in what I say, I apologize to you beforehand.
Di Talo Mise Jage Tolia Jiguriore Uma Jage Tol Jurshawa Nimbaji, Jurnimbaji. Then Jurnimba Paji Injige Tone Jagel Sur Jurshawa Nisre Taganashi de Chatsawaji Yusamare Mushig Tea Dizu Yusamare Inea Tatari Mondo de Mushig Tea Chatsawa Tean Pögenan to Tegar Jurne, that Ditola Narangina, this Chicashueta, but this days which Casueta, but Sudan down to Chevre. Chezan the number Legia Supazi did Toyo Vejoye. The name you Sane and the Injige Tolia, Country Yumenge, Yawahago Mason. And then you say that Shamlia, Koran, Jawari Sizesha, T. Koran Tonama, Shuis.
This year, we have made available a translation of the Torch of Certainty, Jungmulu Drtai's commentary on the Mahamudra and its preliminaries, in the Chinese language. There was an older or previous translation into Chinese. However, it was based on the pre-existing English translation, and also it was incomplete. It did not include the actual practice of Mahamudra. Now we have a translation into Chinese that is both complete, it includes the actual practice, and is based directly on the Tibetan original. I've also reviewed it and corrected it. So I hope that you have received this. I'm not entirely sure what the situation is with respect to the new English translation. In any case, I'm going to go through the text. Then this chapter begins, then the stages of meditation for going for refuge, the first of the four uncommon preliminaries.
Sanso tabe shinga miyashi jachewa, nemna nin tigna barchewa. Zanjang nyushi me ro tume kanyu yenla yedan denbe, chuzu hlai cha genyin drobo tume kanwa. So yi do baksang jishin rubuchi li jube, longzhe me dogo tuyo. Dongbu zawa chile yega choshi yu ngara keba, dugdar ki yu yi dewa sengi yeyi dibirin buchi che. Laze ki kwe rinda mebe gabe,
Imagine that the place in which you are is an utterly pure realm, vast and spacious. Its ground is pliant, so that if you press it down, it gives way and springs back up when released. This ground is composed of bright green grass in which grow many beautiful flowers. In the midst of this realm is a beautiful lake, the water of which has the 8 qualities of pure and potable water. The lake resounds with the sound of many bird calls, as many birds live in and around it. Growing out of the center of the lake is a wish-fulfilling tree. This tree is made entirely of precious materials, including its fruit and flowers, which are in full bloom and therefore weigh it down heavily. The tree has one central trunk and then branches into 4 branches in the 4 directions and a central branch that points upward. And these are arranged like the spokes of an umbrella. In the center, where these branches divide, is a precious throne upheld by 8 lions, on top of which it is covered by brocade or fabric from the Deva realms, on top of which is a 1,000-petaled lotus flower and a full moon disk.
Kundo tingu dungin nangwa debu sheji shani ye sergi doji de yun uyi jibu togar nyonin ziba shiwe sidanji u yenyin yesu shiwe che chuksun zoba tarna zogi doyo do marbyo shandib shab doji gidungli shuwa tsenbe yembe gu sindang yuwa donbaji tu yeba chenbe gongba.
Seated on that throne is in essence your root guru in the form of Vajradhara. He is deep blue in color, like the autumn sky. He has 1 face and 2 hands. His right hand holds a golden vajra, and his left a silver bell. These are crossed over his heart. His gaze is peaceful, and he is adorned with the 13 ornaments of the peaceful Sambhogakaya, such as the crown, the earrings, and so forth. He has an upper garment of multicolored silk and a skirt of red silk. He is seated with his legs fully crossed in Vajra posture and is majestic, blazing with light, fully adorned with the marks and signs of Buddhahood, and gazes upon you or thinks of you with great joy.
Di Uzu ne Yala Rimbashi, Bama Yichewa, Mum Churu Yazu, Dudu Doji, Shagin Zune, Wonsu, Chanju Doji, Shagin, Ishi Doji, Ishi Nimbo, Chin Doji, Shagi Wonju, Wonsu Doji, Kujo Yana, Miyu Doji, Sangi Nimbo, Cheraja, Bezu, Jabesam, Tonga, the Rigbera, the Tishin, Kajo Ambre Doji, Yundu Doji, Beronju Doji, Uyimba, Jeba, Chujim Pushi, Wamba Sonam Doji, Drogas, Resin Sangeta, to Zumkemba. Nyameta, which is Jimila, Mabalos, Mijiba, Shawari, Pavoludu, Saraha, Lodrinci, Dojishan, Tuzita, Te Panangi, Nangecha, Tagol, Jinju, Zemin Genju, Telonaro, Jinju, Saldaso, Pavegi Kiru Laman, Jinder Dimni Shuba.
Starting from above his head and one above another, are Pemanyenje Wompo, Mepam Chudrup Jansu, Dudu Doji, Chuchi Jungne, Jangshu Doji, Chuchi Jundu, Yeshe Doji, Yeshe Nyingpo, Chuying Doji, Chuchi Wongchu, Wongchu Doji, Koncho Yenla, Michu Doji, Sanje Nyingpo, Chudrak Jansu, Pajo Dondo, Jamba Zambo, Tongwan Dondo, Rikpe Randri, Deshin Shekpa, Kachu Wompo, Robe Doji, Yuntun Doji Pal, Rangchun Doji, Ojenpa, Rinchen Pal, Trupchen Karma Pakshi, Ponda Sonon Doji, Drongo Richen Sanje Dra, Dusum Champa, Nyame Dapo, Jitsu Milarepa, Mapa Lotsa, Metripa, Shawari, Papa Ludu, Saraha, Ludu Rinchen, and finally Dorji Vajradhara. And then surrounding them, in the sky or space surrounding them, are the 6 ornaments of Jambudvipa, Telopa, Naropa, the masters of the Drikung, Drogpa, Tselpa, Talung, and so forth, all of the learned and accomplished masters of India and Tibet gathered like clouds.
Di Shagi Yagar Bini Roy Dindu, Doji Pamula, Dege Sansum, Gutu Densum, Jadon Jisum, Tuki Kola, So Gudi Shijugi them, Haramjamgi Gorwa.
On the eastern branch, in front of the gurus, standing on a lotus sun and corpse, is Vajravarahi, surrounded by other yidams such as Chakrasamvara, Hevajra, Guya Samaja, Mahamaya, Buddhakapalin, Chatupita, the Black Yamantaka, the Six-Faced Yamantaka, Vajrabharava, Kalachakra, and all the other yidams of the 4 or 6 tantras.
Yegar Sinti Bender, Dajagadum, Shagatubala, Gesan Sangi Tonzasu, Chuju Tusum, Sanganam, Goa, Gabi Yegar, Tambesh, Suraviana Juni, Kevers Tijin Stanga, Yudi de Jeva, Ligum di number, Serdon Tachimir, Rala Denji, illegally round the Tidri Joba.
On the branch to the right of the gurus, seated on a lion throne, lotus, and moon, is our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, surrounded by the 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate kalpa and all of the Buddhas of the 3 times in 10 directions. On the branch to the rear of the gurus is all of the Holy Dharma, the speech of the Buddha, of the 12 branches of the Buddha's teachings, especially the tantras of the Mahayana secret mantra. All of these in the form of books with a golden brocade brocade and colorful and bright, all of them radiating the sound of the vowels and consonants.
Yuengi Yegar Riksum Gomboso Neve Sege, Gasangi Semba, Chusung Gungao, Nedin Jurus, Tibachijung, Gindu Chansim, Yeram Pameshuba. Walk upon some doji page, Ranjuma, Chashiba, Charge over Zorku, Ishi Chuyon, or kind of some you give a Shubin Dungu, and some you Miyava Shubin Dungu, such as Rani Kurva.
On the branch to the left of the gurus are the lords of the 3 families and the rest of the 8 heart-sun bodhisattvas, all of the bodhisattvas of this fortunate aeon, the Buddha's supreme 2 Shravaka disciples, Ananda, the 16 elders, in short, all of the Arya Sanghas of the Mahayana and Hinayana, bodhisattvas, Shravakas, and Prachika Buddhas. And beneath these sources of refuge are the protectors, Dorje Benachen, Rangjung Jalmo, the four-armed Mahakala, the six-armed Mahakala, and all other wisdom protectors, Viras and Dakinis, inconceivable numbers of them. And then one imagines oneself in front of this assembly, facing it.
Yes, Sawe Pa, Yendo Mazur Give, Namge Kajibi Simja Namda, Kever to Down Neveki, Tomeni, Shagun, Lenja Subin, Redun, Jumbutamji, Tromso Sukaba Namji, Dembe, Reni Yicher, Tamji, Lukubi, Tejar, Yikubi, Teme, Nakubi, Gamdruda, Murtiri, Dumbermela, Yishendo Member, Gamdru Sidian, Yila Samsin, Gadon, Sujetra, Simgelang.
Further, imagine that to your right is your father of this life, to your left your mother of this life, and led by them that you are surrounded by all other sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate you, obstructors who harm you, and all of your karmic creditors, who have taken the form of spirits or demonic beings. Think that all of these beings gathered like a vast crowd are led by you in the act of going for refuge. Led by you, all join their palms together in a physical demonstration of devotion. Rest their minds in a state of devoted faith and aspiration, and with speech, respectfully and melodiously recite the words of going for refuge. Thinking that, without allowing your mind to be distracted to anything else, and while reflecting on the meaning of the words of the refuge vow, recite the refuge vow 100 or 1,000 times and so forth. At the end of the session, generate bodhicitta. At the conclusion of the session, think that the sources of refuge, together with their seats and thrones, melt into light and dissolve into you, causing their bodies, speech, and minds, and your body, speech, and mind to become inseparable. Thinking that, allow your mind to rest naturally. At the end, dedicate the virtue. Imagination, So that concludes the part of this chapter that gives the imagination or meditation to be performed during the practice. What follows now is an explanation of the meaning of taking refuge and an introduction to the vow of refuge itself.
That's Simjengi Kashroda. Do the Simjen Namgi Negoki Turnjida Todu Turn number ni Joya Vimere.
There are two things to be accomplished. The ultimate benefit of beings and the natural or the nature of beings.
That interview negab the Tardugi, there's a Tundu Neveki, Gibu Kandaji Binia, Deneji Ashredago, Ransusugi, Druja, Deshagi, that negab the Tardugi turned Drube shadow, the Drubegi, Topsam, the Drube Nyamlela, Zunga.
So, in order to accomplish these two aims, the immediate benefit of beings and the ultimate benefit of beings, an individual needs to exert themselves.
냠렌디 모 컨트지바 다나 신 구름 컨트이바 다나 신 다가나 냠렌디 지 차상와 진리지 가르에 학과기 다 섬중이 예시 선한다도 섬중이 예시 선한다도 아주 고도 상부지 고여.
But before actually engaging in the practice that will bring these two aims about, we first need to ascertain the nature of such practice, the sequence of the stages of practice, as well as what will make such a practice complete. And we need to gain a full certainty about these things.
대한민국 섬중기 예시함 셈래야 고도 상부지 용어를 세발라 당부 고라 디 탑섬 맹아디 나외 퇴거가 이브레.
But in order to generate that certainty which arises from reflection, one first must have heard these things.
제자 지준 장방 공부 당부 퇴발을 말아 당부 퇴발을 되는 주시 일에 제발 주시 일에 제발래 다 양답에 양다가 되는기 이 리베 이식이 종거래 했어요.
Therefore it was said by the noble Lord Maitreya, in reliance upon hearing, one develops proper mental engagement, on the basis of which one can develop certainty.
다 퇴밭 차대야베 나의 퇴세 고세 든지질이야 되는 퇴밭 제비나 퇴밭 남다 연구 말해드린 인주사는 아주 퇴밭 남다 치고 퇴밭 남다도 가르쳐 버렸으나 말아주 다 덴버시기 중도 만으로와 빵랑 만으로와 시에바 다 드리지 중비나 퇴밭 남다 중에기 고라 라제이 말에 드부이 말에 대답이게 드리 인주사네 퇴밭에야 퇴섬이 미변바 퇴밭 남다 지다 퇴밭이 뿌타고 초도 규버지 제와도 계집니다.
Hearing, however, does not simply refer to everything we hear with our ears. What we mean by the pure hearing or the pure acquisition of Dharmic knowledge is hearing and understanding correctly the Four Noble Truths in all their aspects. And this is pure hearing and will lead to the authentic result of hearing.
퇴바 넘버 타버지 제고예의 인상 대 퇴바를 제발라 되는 계획신이 신이다 담바지 때 삼절 니기고안에 수신도 땡고하래.
Since we need to engage in pure hearing, we therefore need to correctly rely upon a qualified spiritual friend, both in our intentions and in our behavior.
다 대저위기 퇴바 계획신이 리버테네 퇴섬 제유다 최망부 쉬지 아래 드레인 주산에 다 퇴섬 제약 퇴섬 제유 최간다지 오래시 라베이나 조지 반대 어디셔게 체내 운동 시제 남바만 체체겸 지점 미셰비 나베 출려 오면 렘바다 랑거되바 탄도 랑워 차스제 숨번나시 아니 가르주에다 나소리야 카서 구두 세난다도 최기닝도 세난다도 반도나 망보질이야 체 윤통 시제가 남바 망보 인주산에 창물로 퇴섬 세두고 말해 다 인비네야 퇴섬 매도 미로와 카서 구두 다 딘데기 최 남다질이야 라고 하되 개좀 차례.
Once we have learned to correctly rely upon a spiritual friend, what is the Dharma that we should hear from them? There is, after all, a tremendous amount to Dharma. About this, Lord Atisha said that we must extract the essence of Dharma like a swan extracting milk from the water into which it has been poured. There is so much that we could learn. We couldn't possibly learn all of it. So we need to select those aspects of Dharma that are truly necessary and practical.
대한 지당 체빈다 도마르 다꾸니 용모 배초다 남버 장추 배초 세나다도 혼대니기 라랑기 친이담 지 친이디소 아니 만데바 리버 셰베 체도 데네베나지 세만남드라 소바당 아니 퍼진당 우마당 옹발라 소베기 다 슝체모 디줄라야 데네 가르조에 직벨람네 창베 니시 체버지 개버차데 계속시라해.
First of all, in order to correctly understand the difference between utter affliction and utter purity, that is to say, the difference between samsara and nirvana, we need to gain a thorough knowledge and understanding of such great treatises as the commentary on valid cognition, the Prajnaparamita literature, the Madhyamaka, and so forth. All of these things must be studied.
난 대대적인 슝첨부터줄이야 즉 퇴섬체하기 에다 누바 매밤 누바 유야 안에야 슝첨부 지부를 고마고로 체네 전에 베나지 다 람림 베나가 아주 차지신 모르티 니더블이야 전에 아주기 퇴섬을 제제 나르 소수 장샤베기 최대의 상으로 냠래를 잡네. 어떤 네 남기 비조리, 네 남기 예라래, 네 남기지 기세 봉되네 삼바로지. 단도나 냠래를 화마도 베기 냠래를 미고야. 다든지기 최 중세게 매봐. 로라 차르토버부터 중의미나 아주 다 섬중기 담바섭선한다도 다 섬중 아 퇴상의 냠래 제바들이야.
If someone is unable to study all of these great treatises, or while able wishes to focus on one treatise alone, it is appropriate to study expositions of the stages of the path. For example, in the Mahamudra context, like this presentation of practical instruction on the preliminaries. By doing so, one can apply all of the information one learns about Dharma to one's practice and gain a thorough understanding of what constitutes the principal aspects of practice, what constitute its branches, what constitutes correction and enhancement. And by focusing all one learns on practice, one can develop the authentic first stage of the wisdom of reflection.
아야, 다들 인주산 된대왜 퇴섬 송도 대회 토안에 되네 퇴섬 송도 대회 토안에 냠래는 주고 이미나 야 냠래는 될 현다 민저왜 뽑아 캐버지나 니시 캐버지 아 되지 토투그레스.
In short, if one's practice is based upon the combination of hearing and reflection, one will have much greater confidence and much greater trust in the practice.
다 될래야 금들이야 되네 가주에 투모메 병원으로 시티베 겁리야 깜주 미림 데 통마르셰 통마르 깜주 티베 데 깜주 티게 그거보다 윤선 가려를 쉬비나.
Now, in this context of instruction on the uncommon preliminaries, you will have noticed that the first presented is going for refuge, including the meditation associated with that. Now, why does this come first?
대양 하나도 다 남부 상계봐. 땅 하나도 돼. 이제 남부 상계배 제도 수업 잠시다. 남부 상계봐 제제 소소리야 민다바 점식이 저거야. 이 남바 상계에 제도 추네 거바 개발지엔당 된 개발지엔 저부 개발지엔지 토벌 제고.
It is not sufficient for us simply to include ourselves among the ranks of Buddhists and adopt the name or title of a Buddhist. To be really included among the ranks of Buddhists, we need to be developing and bringing about a good or extraordinary result.
다텔레야 뱅고 파발루루기 가르송아 가르사나 당봉원바라 토웨치 신행에 버릭번 중스 된데지 송아래 다디 가르송아 가르사나 나란소기 되네베 된도 녀르제기 취함 터도 미유르부터 가르사나 타바던 탐제기에 고마토야 되레스 대토바르 쳬벌레야 가르고 가르사나 되네 코와 타다 동해게는 신도 셰베 니중 니중 그 타베 탕바 튀니 로시고 아래 대개버 쳬벌레야 응은되그 류제 상보 대기 주주 상배 밀류좀 못치 드리스토고 아래 대대외기 대기 주주 상배 밀류좀 못치 대양 대네베 가르소에 놈세기 마음에 떠오는 신 가라 직라와 대리 주산에 진짜게 딱 안들 녀래야지 기부 중요기 삼바티조 즉 체도 심마 기부 중요기 로종 샤디조 가르쳐 체단데 가지고 하데 기좀 차디 알았어.
About this, Arya Nagarjuna said, first, the Dharma that leads to higher rebirth should be presented, and then on the basis of that, the Dharma that leads to the certain excellence of liberation and omniscience. Now what this means is that while our ultimate or final purpose is the achievement of complete liberation and omniscient Buddhahood, the achievement of that depends, first of all, on our giving rise to an authentic and intense desire to be free. This desire to be free, in turn, depends upon a recognition of the pervasiveness of suffering in samsara. That recognition depends upon one's gaining a precious human body with its freedom and resources. And also, one must recognize the fragility and impermanence of that human body, that the human state is like a butter lamp that is running out of fuel. So one must begin with the thoughts and training of the lesser individual.
어다들이 인주산에 텐주를 가르쳐요. 탑을 주벌래야 매도 메로와 텐주기 류제 상보지 톱 대대베 텐주기 류제 상보디 되네 지 직라와 임버지 셰 아는 지 계속 지소나 개와시 랭고 아래 개와데 따지 간로 참여가 따뜻네 짓고 가르쳐요. 개와 가르질래 딩수에 매봐 나들이 인주산에 디균셀에 되네 딱 한다 진짜게 간다 코에 동해래야 이자네 나 텔레 타르 치에도 깜내 양다 쇠고 아래 깜내 양다 쇠고 삼백이 론도 지기 아래 들이 뉴스 깜내 디체도 아니 깜도디 토마스 뭐 이브레스.
Since the precious human body is necessary for the achievement of liberation, we must understand its fragility. And furthermore, that when the human body is destroyed, one automatically goes through rebirth. And we have no idea and no way to know where or as what we are going to be born. There is no certainty. And therefore, through understanding this, we give rise to fear of the sufferings of samsara. And that fear of the sufferings of samsara is what inspires us to seek authentic sources of refuge from the sufferings of samsara. It is for that reason that the refuge is presented first.
Kujo Sumria, Jamdu Chevekala, Gelson Druegi, Guam, Gelson Drage, that Gumzen Kala Dene, that Gels Dragi, Kajreda, Gumzam, and Anashi Nilu de Kares Shuvina.
But what is the cause? What is the reason for which we take refuge in the three jewels? And what is the nature of doing so?
Judelia number years. Julia number years.
There are two causes of going for refuge.
Tangu Delia do you sometimes do you they want do are take you 동해 태원 누구여디 이네야 삼바달라네 신지로 홀로네 진짜게다 대외기 예 그래서 대화탑에 유 개와 마주 동해 조직이 유미게와 주발라 되네 땅에서 숨도 놓고 아래 대나리 에서 숨도 놓고 여기 인도산에 에서 숨도 놓고 얘기 내당으로 니주 되게 들려야 아주 지신 잡아지 삼바지 고가 그래서
The first of the two causes for going for refuge is the understanding that while all beings want happiness, what we get is suffering. The reason why we don't get what we want, why we get what we don't want, is because our wishes and our actions are contradictory to one another. While we wish for happiness, we do not engage in virtuous actions, the causes of happiness. While we wish not to suffer, we do engage in unvirtuous actions that are causes of suffering. Therefore, we are reborn in the three lower realms and suffer terribly there. So we need to understand and fear the intense and prolonged suffering of lower rebirth.
어다디 기부 충우 디술이야 텐저웨가 땅안 지고지고 와래 다 기부 링 디술이야 코와 타다 동해의 정신을 만대봐 텔레야 되네 직시 따로로 드리지게고 와래 기부 침벽qab이야 전이 동해기 가지시 나나 유네야 나나 저거도스 이나야 토마 매번에 라래야 거진 체외 마게 심제 탐제 랑와 태네 레더 녀몽 베게데 코아 진시기 코아들라 되네 코르데바디 베니 신도 니제 유레 삼바르스 텔레야 베 인지라 첨부게바 드리지고
So the fear that is necessary for the lesser individual is a fear of the three lower realms and their suffering. The intermediate individual, because they see all of samsara as suffering, fears not just the three lower states, but fears all of samsara itself and wants freedom from that. The greater individual further recognizes that all beings throughout beginningless time have been wandering without any control or freedom in samsara and suffering terribly. So therefore, they do not fear their own suffering. They can put up with their own suffering in samsara, but they fear the further suffering of all beings. And it is from that that they seek freedom.
Oh, that dream you sane, Dina Lolia, Kora, Sishim, Sum Sundua, Gibu Chinding Chung Sum Sana, Dredo, Yanache, Loy Jimba, Loy, the Nubachichung Sum Sana, Dredo, that Kandaria, Narazuji, Church Dualia, the Degi Karsway, force someone with Jablo Nepa, the Shugam Yenu de, that did the 직자 직신 작we 로스야마베 다 드리지 고어스 땅 알아서라 컨디스도 다들 소소가 칸낭도 거네 소소리아 된데베 다지 내세르 숨여베 나네 가르도 레벨 가리난도스 그 삼동과의 계시mış다래 아주 남주 남바 인도도 지다가서 지금 단 릭디기 삼바르 지다 라브도 중어도 다지 라브도 중에 다철로도 지든지 여베 인자 딘 릭디기 삼로르 데데르 마도 오늘 전에 그 답에 수술이야 인지게도 마소네지 인베스티게이션 제 딱지 땅네 내 땅으로 가르치래도 딱지 땅이 누 어다다 들으기 가르쳐래 내 땅 숨부 디나라다 기부 전부다 파샤 정부 파샤 기부 충원섬을 로인 누가 충다 대야 대라야 말리버로 디제가 아주 다 소나 마시다요디가 디제질 말리베 인두산에 애니베 쳬리야베 주가 로디 슉 첨버지다 잡로는 봐 미자마스는 부가자년데 슉 첨버시다야 말데 슉 첨버시다면 두상 아주 쳬디 다 태kö즈르지 다다 거냠지 넘바는 되나 냠도 지금 가수로다지 고 투즈디 카카 가수 투즈디 카강 투즈르지 마다베 야버지 부다버지 이건도 말았어.
So there are in that sense three types of person, or one could think of it as three levels of attitude. In any case, in all three cases, a type of fear particular to that level or that type of person is the necessary force or momentum which causes the person to engage in the practice of Dharma. And we need to have such an impetus, such a force. We need to look at ourselves, each of us as individuals, and ask ourselves the hard question, at which of these three levels am I really? We say that we're Buddhists, and because we identify ourselves as Buddhists, we think that we're okay, that that's enough. If we are monastics, we feel that because we are monastics and wear monastic robes, then we're okay, and that's enough. But we really need to investigate what our attitude is. I feel that in many cases, forget about the greater or intermediate types of individual, we may not even have developed the attitude of the lesser individual. And in that case, we lack the strong momentum that will bring us to authentically going for refuge, because there is nothing pushing us, nothing forcing us to do so.
다들 균이버데 가르쳤잖아. 이체버데. 제가 나도 담부 코에 동해시 되는 직버셔 뭐야. 단 직버 때문에 껴변 누가 소리 알았으나. 라마 꾸졌으면 여봐 인두산. 라마 꾸졌으면 누버데 여봐 닝타반에 이체버시고 알았어.
The second cause of taking refuge is faith or belief. The first is our fear of samsara. But the second aspect of our wish to go for refuge is the belief that the Guru and the three jewels can actually protect us from these sufferings.
이나야 마수도 간데 차도르서나 남주 꾸졌으면 껴서 랍 이나 내가 도연주산에 베나 내다 된기 사와를 총 차와 계신들이 제고야나 다 대회 세회가 탑디 꾸졌으면 마덴베체 꾸졌으면 임바르지 다저 모단 지이다 대라소바 든지지 망보지리아 간다를 가수에다지 잡주에 대한 거지 그때 모다 지도 잡주에데 지당 교회 대대 교회스게 말해디 이베네 아주 기승 거 나로라 가라오랬잖아 군조숨리야 겹수 누구 제바장 군조숨을 겹수 저지 카점 측점마도 닝다바네 이제게야 말았어 닝다바네 이제게메 인두산 뒷감도데 쿨 챔버지도 누버 챔버지 용도가 말았어 그래서 갱이 근데 충분히냐 샘기 폭들이야 군조숨 딱 가수에 이체백이 샘버를 첨부지에이나 대기 가다 수술이야 간다를 가수에 rewa chimbujidan 이제 심부지 뭐 진도가래 그냥 아주 때 매비면 우토윤도 사네 아니 바지 디술이시라 배주민도 섬섬으로지 다 신다지래야 잡수 들어가야 차요 대 차윤도 사네 아니 잠도 야부 매베다 퇴용과래서
Unfortunately, we usually behave as though we lack this type of belief. We say that we take refuge in the three jewels, but as soon as something goes wrong, we almost invariably turn elsewhere. When afflicted by sickness or demonic persecution, we don't look to the three jewels for refuge or protection. We look elsewhere, to divination or astrology and so forth. And this is tantamount to taking refuge in those things. There's nothing wrong with using divinations or astrology, but the problem is that we have no heartfelt attitude of taking refuge in the three jewels. Our taking refuge is merely something that we feel we should do or are expected to do. And therefore, our refuge has no real power behind it. If we have the real belief, a deep-seated belief that the three jewels can protect us from the sufferings of samsara, then we will have the intense hope and intense trust that they will. But we're not like that. As soon as we become desperate under any circumstances, we turn elsewhere, which is a sign that there is something wrong with our taking refuge.
아들이 뉴스라는 아주 잘라 빼는 지된 걸로 빼는 잘라로 상부 야부치 소고는 녜래야 돼 잘라도 소야 그 규제 material 다들 뿌다버진 아주 당화체고 초이스체고 대체번 난신 안쪽을 짬도 뿌다버지 야부치 용을 제발이야 짬주 그 균이 못해라베 슉 차고 거네 바텔라 떼네 다 야부치 아지다 땜보지 아기 매주
If we want to create something in the world, we first of all make sure that we have the correct and pure materials needed to make that thing. It is the same thing with our vow of refuge. If we want to develop an authentic attitude of taking refuge, we need to make sure that we have the right stuff, the right material within us, the right attitude, which will allow us to do so.
다지네 겹유 겹순로 세기 유 데카레스 다된 뇌송어 채블이야 뇌송이 채비나 겹순로 세기 유디 구조스
Well, first of all, we need to identify the sources of refuge. And our sources of refuge are the three jewels.
다들라 떠바 장어 주바사지 상기기 떠바 말 자갈라 상기기 떠바 년라지 지여버려 디나로라 가르송어서나 간실라니 녀바고 때는 용의 명하시 한라 남바 탐지도 윤된 탐지 내 주르바 가디 셈지 유엔하는 디니라 겹주시 대대 테네 구하다 대 때라 네바 릭체 송하다 다디 둔다데 가르스 오르스나 계시 만에 미질이야 닝이 셈바 여버르지 빵랑기 오늘 전에다 페뉴 다 가르쳐 다 대사하면 다 간다 레바 여버르지나 스마트 somewhere 남주 예버르지 미지 남주 예버지나 그거 가르쳐서나 랑기 초치체네 러니 남바 임바점기 에네 지 군조송 초쳐봐 마이마 다나시 러니 베나다 출루 신다다 마임바점지기 에드네 양 신기 초라 당와쳐봐 마이마 간달 로스르네베 토네 겹던 겹메인베기 남주 가른 겹던 겹메인베제베 남주 켜버지 된제게 답에 가서래다 시럽 켜버지지 미지를 유나 술을 겹수 줘버렸어 라면나 구졌음 겹수 줘버렸어.
In a famous praise of the Buddha that comes from India, it is pointed out that if someone has a brain in their head, if someone is smart or intelligent, if they have a good understanding of what to do, what to avoid, they will not simply identify themselves as Buddhist or follower of the Three Jewels out of a preference for the Buddhist tradition over others, but based upon an intelligent recognition of the valid reasons for taking refuge in the Three Jewels.
Tela kunjo sumla 겹순 조고 윤세 가르쳐다 티 가르치는 겹순 조고 왔을라나 겹순 조고기 땀바 상게 좀 된데 될래야 윤세 당보디 될래야 되네 베지 녀바 삼제 세버레스 녀모바다 시제 집에 녀바 삼제 세버레 제자 지 파샤 녀베 파샤 처무서야 요 말레스 다가나시 될래야 남바 탐제도 연대다 되버레스 참참지 연대 나 덴베서로 야 참참 지 연대 매베서로 된대지 여기 미덴바만 봐 연대 탐지 남바 탐지에도 연대다 덴베기 몰래야 내뒤에 인두사네 다 된대 인두사 디규젤 되네 상게 된대 상게 덤바 상게 좀 된들 겨 도레스 되네 덤바 상게 좀 된들 겨 손로알 쇼라 되네 간다라 대기 세 파베 긴주 탐제라 겹수 좋아래 되네 디숨베게 롱도기 템버를 묻지 다 될래야 아지 수수기 잠내는 거 두시에 손에 겹수 좋아래 되네 인두산에 디주젠 된다 고조숨 될래야 고조숨부디 겹유도 뭐 소이버.
Why should we go for refuge to the Three Jewels? Well, first of all, we take refuge in the Buddha because he has eradicated all flaws without exception. He has eradicated all mental afflictions, all ignorance, all cognitive obscurations. He has eradicated even the subtlest form of habits. And therefore, he possesses all possible qualities. This is not like when we say that someone has all qualities but they only have partial attributes. The Buddha truly possesses every single good quality there is. We therefore take refuge in him, and naturally, ensuing upon doing so, we also take refuge in the children of his heart, the Arya Bodhisattvas, the Arya Sangha. And we also take refuge in the Dharma that he taught, the Dharma of tradition and the Dharma of realization. It is for this reason that the Three Jewels are our sources of refuge.
다 드네. 다 샴리야. 겹수에 윤센시고다. 당기디 겹 유용을 소체. 다 겹수에 윤센들이야. 윤센 카시죠 알아. 윤센 담보 디 가라잖아. 르니 지고 탐지에는 쳐와. 님의 인상 교수는 주규기다 공조수부들은 지고 탐지를 쳐와 인상 교수의 교재 당보대 상황이 알았어.
Now, why is it possible for us to take refuge in these sources of refuge? There are several reasons. The first is that the Buddha himself is utterly free from any danger or any peril whatsoever.
대대 따고 셈시라래. 소수 지고대 제바. 소수 지배에 예비나. 되네 셴라 펜도 매베 띵도 런이 셴라 잡주고 알아 처리에 인상 뒤잡수 매버레스. 배나 추 랑와 매바 켄종이 미디기 추 케 미신다디 오고 된 가르소에 된 투고 말았어. 년갈래 저 투고 말았어. 되네 인주산에 다 핀수지기 지리야 봐 가르소에 주비나 창원이나 니가기 가르소에 소통자가 내가 여버레스 드리누사 디교전 때네 되네 가르소에 아주 코에 동해를 저거이나 코에 동해기 다 직벌레 저스미기 짬내지래 cap주고를 마도베 전이 코에 지den게 지랴 코에게 전을 라와메바 지 내den게 지랴 cap주야 말았어.
We who are in peril of the sufferings of samsara, cannot protect others. If someone who is themselves in peril tries to protect others, they will not only be unable to do so, they actually need the protection of another. For example, if someone who cannot swim, who is drowning in water, attempts to rescue another person who was also drowning in the same body of water, rather than anyone being rescued, they'll drag each other down to the bottom. In the same way, we cannot effectively take refuge in someone or something that is not free from samsara. Only someone or something like the Buddha that is utterly free from the perils of samsara can free us from them.
신 접수주세 유대 신 직원을 줘야 탑락해 가지고 그래서 가르에서나 고라 직원도 동에 남바 미라고 뭐야 알았어. 대레 직원도 동에 에 점이 대달래 에 대다기 가르에 내당도 튀마당 심지소수 감다 매바도 튀베 토안에 되네지 탑차 상황 되네지 시에지고 그래 대 마시에나 지고도 동에를 껴두고 말했으니 주산에 신 지고를 저에 탑락해 와디 연대지 상고.
The second reason why we can take refuge in the three jewels is that they possess the skill needed to free others from the sufferings of samsara. In addition to being free oneself from the sufferings of samsara, in order to serve as a source of refuge for others, one needs the skill or knowledge that recognizes the specific remedies needed for the many different types of suffering and many different types of peril that beings encounter. One needs to know the means appropriate in each case, as well as those appropriate to the dispositions of different individual beings.
아드네 균진 숨버들이야 투지 시험보는 일이 매버지고 그래서 나한테 가라했잖아 랑 간들 접수 조세기 유대 일이 차단 차고 유대게 드리지 예외이나 참선 접수 그래 참선 접수 말해 나 진짜 뭐이 봐 랑 간들 접수 조세 유대 일이 차단 매봐 심지 탐제를 녀봐 심 녀봐 드리지 예외이나 아주 심지 리메바 탐제기 겹다 초보를 차 조여하래 내 인두산에 디기 연대 상과에 계속 찾아가.
The third reason why we can take refuge in the three jewels is that they possess impartial great compassion. An authentic source of refuge must be utterly impartial in their compassion. If they are preferential, then they might provide refuge at some times and not provide it at others. But the three jewels are utterly impartial in that they have equal compassion for all beings without preference.
나중에 시버디 팬 따와다 마다와 탐지기 된자와 나디 가르서는 소술이야 수 된저베다 니리메베 이나야 야 소술이야 수 팬도 징에 주나 델리 대련도 파 팬버주 소술이야 팬 단계도 당 소술이야지 되게 가르쳐야지对当 구루와 징에도 뭐좀이나 델레 팬미도 봐 되게 뭐인 봐 내가 탐제도 심진생이 된 혼날래야 쉬어 심진생이야 팬버 뭐시 주봐 아나 드리지기 계주암 연대지 창고야.
The fourth attribute that an authentic source of refuge must possess is they must be willing and able to help not only those who help or benefit them, but those who do not. They must be willing and able to help beings whether or not they treat them with service and respect, and not only help others in repayment of what others have done for them.
다드니 인두산에 디주 상월로 된저베 다 겹수에베 규제함 코라 가수에다 겹수 가수 외베 규제 다 되게 주 덴바 상기 좀 된데 이게 다 겹수에베 규제 차디야래 다 덴바 상기 좀 된데 겹수 외베 규제 상여베 텔라 때네 담배 쉐양 겹수에베 다 고란 거지
Now, these attributes of a fit source of refuge primarily refer to or pertain to the Buddha himself. But because the Buddha possesses these attributes, it automatically ensues that the holy Dharma taught by him is also a fit source of refuge.
배 자천부 폐윤 천부 누바 천부 든데지 예바 있나 다 되게 가서 컨트스 깨고 그랬어 나 아주 깨민도 와서 다 간다 와 이제 누바 천부 예바现在 마시나 고现在 쳐서 깨민도 아주 다디 고 동해를 실 참대 그래 이 뉴스안에 아디 자천부 개천부 제제 시대 마데스 깨민도가 가르잖아 뭐이 니즈 되려야 고바 주민도 와서 TV나 다 들려야 Given
that these sources of refuge are so wondrous, can bring such benefit, have so much power, we might entertain the question, well, how exactly can or do they protect us? I don't feel particularly protected right now. I'm still suffering in samsara. So exactly how is it that the three jewels are supposed to protect me?
니 땡고 땡가라서나 아주 껴버 제발라스 껴버 제발라 유인이 창고 유인이보다 가라 유인 당보다서나 치유암 치예람 취 자기는 직창고 니버들야 난기 자기야 난기 유 니창 디니 니창보이나 어느 신의 잡도 그래서 디니 니 마사지 직창 직마도 현바도 마상아 이미나 The
answer to this question is found in a praise to the Buddha written by the great master Dignaga, in which he raised 2 points. He said that in order for us to be protected by the three jewels, there need to be 2 conditions, the external condition and the internal condition. And that without the presence of both of these, we will not be protected.
대래야 취 자기한테 가르쳐나 덤바상게 좀 된데 코랑기 담보 전주서도 투게네 바도 춘이상 통원버서 잡아 상게 되게 상물로 알아주 체들이 제제 공기 다 간다 배주를 나야 아래 되게 인주산 딱 공급에 가서 치기 자기는 차장한디 공 좀버를 채야 좀 돼요. 임베나 난기 차게암 난기 규대 가르선 마주베 로데 링주르 사란다도 베이 베데 야서 야탐바 구조스물이야 이 가서 이 체네 껴순지 거 알아 텐데위 껴순지 것이 유나 난기 차게 좀 바래 매나 차게 만져 바래
The outer condition is the Buddha. That is to say, that he first generated bodhicitta, subsequently gathered the two accumulations, and finally achieved perfect and manifest Buddhahood for our benefit. The presence of the Buddha is the presence of the outer condition. But the inner condition that is also necessary is our unreserved entrustment of our welfare, 100% to the three jewels. Without the presence of that inner condition of complete, unreserved entrustment of our well-being to the three jewels, we will not receive their protection.
Oh yeah, that's the dream. Just some just some you may say the countries have what is na? Oh, the Sangil just shows some shiki pingo amare. Temo jawa samki pingo amare. Miju tamba some shiki, but gala habre. Da country is na. Just some ichi you may de Sangi soon be chedi, susu jaja jatambaji, Yamsu lemale, tell to the 미지 자서 자타면 이치에나 그시에 계시들라 자서 자타면 이치체 아 델레야 가서기 땡 냠내 쳐고가 쳐와르 네 뉴스안에 디규제 때네 다 이체 자서 자타면 유명사디 상계를 빼내셔야 되면 좀 많이 봐就是그 가서 거든체 세다서 많이 봐 소수 런규리야 최 담배 최를 뭐지 냠수 다 자식 자타면 냠수 랭기 유메 다 될토데.
How can we ascertain whether or not we are entrusting ourselves 100% without reservation to the three jewels? We cannot assess this simply by observing whether or not we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, or whether or not we join our palms in reverence upon hearing the Buddha's name, or whether or not we are moved to tears by hearing of the Buddha. We can only ascertain whether or not we are entrusting ourselves 100% to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha by observing whether or not we are capable of practicing 100% of the Buddha's teachings. It is not sufficient for us to praise the Buddha. It is necessary for us also to implement his teachings. And only if we are 100% committed to such implementation are we 100% entrusting ourselves to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
가담 고모티스 가르송 알았으나 상기 점된데 장외네 다지 총이 용수 줘봐 인장 지 심지어 탐지 끼지질이야 드외게 누바 나도 알았어 다 와나 상게 누바 예비나 다 심지어 탐지 드외면서 가지 알았다 동해게 나를 죽니 되네 상게 니지 매워랬으나 그 말이죠. 델라양 아주 남주 삼기미자바 시시아요. 상기가 누가 상기미자바 심진 감 삼기미자바 시아요. 제장 상기 삼기미자바 인반단시 심진다 삼기미자바 인주상 권이 용버지 인주산에 상기 강수수자요 말. 상기 단 지딘 거바버 소르체네. 지딘 거바버서 말다 코란 지딘기 배 가르소에 가르소 빅 보스를 제제다 가르소네 가르타주 셴네 호랑 제초조지 요 말아봐 닌주산에 심지지 랭에 사위나 고 랭에 사위 너민디 고 민고가 때라 상기가 소샤스게 요 말 그래서나 다 고랑게 랭에 제면 주고들라 오 나버미바 동해와 지와디 고라다 간다 레 렌제 도다래 렌제 도단들이야 상기가 소지 잡샤스게 요 말 어다드니 민주산에 디제기다 삼기미게베 네드지미 인두산에 디규젤데네 나라중에 상계 누가 삼기미게베 여바 삼시 핑거만 나라중에네 딱 간다라 자기에는 어떻게 돼 정보
In the words of Kadampa forebears, because the Buddha has perfected the gathering of the two accumulations, he actually has the power or ability to liberate all beings in a single instant. This invites the question, why does he not do so? Why does he allow us to suffer? Is the Buddha not compassionate? No. There are said to be 4 things that are inconceivable. One of them is the attributes and power of the Buddha. Another is the state and obscurations of sentient beings. The Buddha is not like some big boss of the universe who can change our karma. If beings accumulate negative karma, they will experience the result of their actions. And the Buddha cannot change that. So in spite of the Buddha's inconceivable power or ability, he cannot negate our karma.
아들 배를 세위미나 탕천부지 알아 탕양바 탕다천부시지 알아 대기 탕대기 기절이야 아니 미지 알아 미디에게 지 예윤 가서 탄이 뭐지리야 구르지 알아 구르 나전에 구르디 여배 인도산에 되네 아니디 급질이야 세라당 세라 남과는 세라 장부당 세라 장부던 주산에 거라 계시 미디 구르디나르냐 주위입니다. 그 세레 동고 말았어. 구르디나 먼주체 야르주 마르주 탄천부지 야주 머주 세잖아. 안다 세레 동야 마도요 말했어. 되는 신기 코로안디 탕자신부터 집어를 채. 구르데 상게 꾸졌습니다. 그치? 구르기나 드네 인주상 구르젤라 세라를 껴베 누버야. 이는 미디 구르디나 만주나 구르젤라 세라를 껴베 누버 예장 세라를 껴두고 대난신 알아서 대난신기 군조스물이야 코알이 껴베 누버 예장 수수 군조스물이 껴서 로네 담배 취냐서 말레나 군조스물라 코알이 껴베 누버 예장 코알이 전이 코알이 두고 말았어.
To give you an analogy, imagine a vast field. In the center of that field is a person, and near that person is a tent. There occurs a hailstorm, and the person is being hit by hailstones. If they enter the tent, they will be protected from the hailstorm because the tent is strong enough to protect them and shelter them. But as long as they do not enter the tent, they will continue to be struck by the hailstones. Well, in the analogy, the person usually does not enter the tent. Instead, they run all over this vast field, up and down and left and right. But no matter where they run in the field, other than the tent, they're still going to continue to suffer being struck by the hailstones. In the analogy, the field represents samsara. The tent represents the protection afforded by the 3 jewels. The tent has the power to protect the person from the hailstorm, but not if they don't enter it. In the same way, the 3 jewels have the power or ability to protect us from the hailstorm of samsara, but not if we refuse to practice Dharma, which is like failing to enter the tent.